Fireside Chat with Rachel Smythe. Very, very exciting. My name is Jo Rochelle, and before we dive in, let's take a look at a sizzle reel featuring Rachel's comic, Lore Olympus. That was awesome. Okay, so once again, my name is Jo Rochelle. I am a television writer currently on strike with the WGA. Woo, yes! Hoping for a fair deal. And I'm also the host of the Girl Wonder podcast, where I analyze and discuss comics on Webtoon, including Lore Olympus. I've interviewed Rachel many times, and I'm super, super excited to be your moderator today. So, yes, it's going to be a great one-on-one conversation with Rachel, and I thought I'd say a few nice things about her before we bring her up here, because I really admire her. So, Rachel is just a very kind, funny, down-to-earth human being, also a multi-award-winning comic creator, so she's extremely talented as well. And back in the day when I first started my podcast, I had like 300 listeners, and I felt like, yay, 300 listeners, and Rachel was one of them. And when my podcast microphone broke down, she messaged me and was like, I can help you get another podcast microphone so you can continue. Back in like 2019. She's a wonderful human being. We're gonna have such a great time talking to her in like a one-on-one intimate conversation just about how Lore Olympus became so popular and has touched so many people's lives. So without further ado, let us welcome Rachel Smythe, the creator of Lore Olympus. All right, can you hear us? Okay, Rachel, congratulations, first of all, on winning your second Eisner Award, which you won last night. So how has your Comic-Con experience been so far?
It's been very, very good, and everyone's been very nice to me. It's really it's fantastic to be here because the last time I got to come to a convention and interact with the readers of Lore Olympus, like face to face, was back in 2019, and at the time I was like, oh, I'll definitely be able to come back next year. And then I thought, oh, perhaps I'll never get to come do anything like that again, and I'll never get to see anyone again. So I'm very grateful to be here and see you all and hear your stories and meet you. Yeah.
I felt the same way. Like after she went to the LA Comic-Con in 2019, it was like, we'll see everyone again next year.
Yeah, I was like, catch you then.
So for those of us who aren't familiar with how you started your journey as an artist and a creator, can you let us know how Lore Olympus came to you?
So I think for quite some time I had wanted to write and illustrate a comic about Hades and Persephone, but I don't think I really had like the skill set that I wanted at the time. And I got to my 30s and I was like, you know how you feel when you reach an age where there's a zero there? I always feel like it's more significant. You're like, there's that zero. And I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to like feel like I have the skill set, so I'm just gonna have to do it. So I just started doing it like bit by bit. And I was like, I don't really know how to draw a man, but I can try.
I mean, she could draw a man.
Yeah.
That is a man right there.
Like, this goes to show, if you feel like you can't do something, like, just, you gotta start doing it.
That's amazing. So you started, and what was the initial response when you just first put out like the first 2 episodes?
So the first 2 episodes, they were not very long. Like, this is on Canvas. Canvas. I think they were like 6 panels long, and I think the first one was Hades getting out of a car and then receiving a text message that he was going to be a very lonely bachelor, and that was it. And I got 6 comments, and I was like, ooh. 6. And I was like, I won't let my fame go to my head. But I was very excited about it, and I was like, I gotta make more panels for these 6 people.
I love that, though. You started caring about them even when there were just like a few people. You're like, I still have to try. I still have to do this.
But it felt like a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
6 people you don't know.
Yeah.
Like strangers
Yeah.
who care about your story.
Yeah.
That's true. So I received the statistic that Lore Olympus has been viewed globally over 1.5 billion times on Webtoon, which that is so much. That is so many views. Are you able to comprehend 1.5 billion views of your comic?
It was all me refreshing. No, I can't. I don't know. It's so many.
That's so many.
It's a lot.
That's amazing. So when did you feel like it was starting to take off? Like, it started with 6, and that was really precious to you to have those 6 comments. When did it start to feel like, oh, this is becoming something?
I think when someone gave me a fan art, and I was so surprised. Like, they were like, here's a fan art. And I was like, for moi? I did not know this was a thing. And I was like, this is nice. I like this. And then cosplayers started cropping up, and like little communities started growing, and there was just like so much interest, and I was, it was very surprising and very nice. I think probably when I really thought it was taking off, this is very Discord related, but I made a Discord when like it first went out onto originals, and I was like, I bet I'm gonna have around like 50 people, maybe, and it's probably gonna be like dead in a year, I suspect. But no, there's a very big Discord channel, and I was like, I need more moderators. Oh my gosh. I think probably it really started taking off around just before episode 40, and it's like, there's like a long period of time where Hades and Persephone are not together. Like, they go and do a bunch of stuff, and I don't know. And it takes them a long time to get in the same room, and when they get back together, it's really dramatic. Like, it's full on like a Celine Dion music video, and like there's just like magical hands and stuff, and zooming around, and there's rain, and it's all very dramatic, and like the episode was really well received, and everyone was really excited, and I was like, yeah, this is a good time. Yeah.
So you'd say like around episode 40 of the original, you were like,
yeah,
you're feeling it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. So in a panel yesterday, I heard you talking about how in your process you have a story Bible. Can you elaborate on your process? Like, what is that story Bible for those of us who don't know how you approach your comic?
So a story Bible is something that I kind of learnt to do like later on, so it's not something that I had from the get-go, so I don't want to mislead anyone into thinking that I'm organized. But like a story Bible is basically like if you're making a story and you want to have your sort of core ideas listed out. It's kind of like the big reveals and like the lore of your world, so you can refer back to it. And it really helps if you are writing a really long story, because you will forget things. Like, originally when I was like up to episode 40, I was like, I remember every single episode. Like, you could show me any panel, and I'd be like, I know what episode that's from, like that. But now I'm like, oh, God, I don't know. I'm like, there's a lot. But it's also really helpful if you're working with someone else, like your editor, and you can be like, here's the, like, it's like making a wiki, little mini wiki, and just be like, here's the information. And it's like a little different from an outline.
Like your own personal wiki.
Yeah, it is. It's like a tiny little wiki for you and your story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I first learned about Persephone when I was like in 6th grade in a class. Like we were reading about it. How did you first learn about Greek mythology? How did that come into your life?
So I think I was in is 12 middle school for here?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Disney's Hercules came out, and I went to watch it with my sister, and I was like, oh, I quite like that. That was quite good. And at that time, dial-up, does anyone remember dial-up? Yeah, okay. So we got our first family computer with dial-up, and we all got to use dial-up for 30 minutes a day. And then my 30 minutes would begin, and I'd be like, it's time to do my research. Disney's Hercules. and then I'd be like, Hades. Like, I need to know. And then I just looked through it all, and I was like, wait a minute. He has a wife? Where is she? She's never anywhere. It's so upsetting. Anyway, I was like at the library. I was searching high and low, just like learning all I could about this character. And I think at that stage in my life, I was a very strange little person. And I think a lot of people know what that feels like when you're like, I have these things I'm enthusiastic about and no one around me really cares. So I think, it's an isolating time, so there were definitely like stories that I held on to and treasured that kept me entertained in that time. And I think, when you really like things at, like 12 is hard, like it's a really hard age because you're like becoming a human being. And then it's hard, and you're like, oh no, what? And then moving into high school, I was like, when I go to high school, certainly I will find my people there, and I cannot wait to tell them about Victor Hugo's Hunchback of Notre Dame. And I was in for a rude awakening. So it was more Persephone for a few years there, but yeah, that's how I got there, yeah.
And so fast forward from 12-year-old Rachel to the Rachel who's creating the comic, that's a lot of Greek mythology. Like, we are not just dealing with Hades and Persephone, we're dealing with Demeter and Hera, and Hermes is in there, and Eros, and so many characters. So how does your research, how are you learning these things so that you can adapt them into your comic?
I listened to a lot of lectures. Originally in high school, I did take classics, but unfortunately, I am dyslexic and I have a few other learning disabilities that does make it quite difficult for me to exist within academia. And it goes too fast, and you're like, wait. I like it, don't leave me behind. But anyway, so I was like, I'll teach myself. So I used a lot of audiobooks and read a lot, and yeah, lectures are good. There's a lot on, I think it's the Great Courses Plus or something. You certainly can learn from them. You probably heard them advertised, and they're good. And just, what really helped is there was a new translation for the Odyssey that was done by a woman. Yeah. It's very nice, and they kind of update the language in it, so you read it and you don't feel like you're being called a B word all the time. It's very good. I really enjoyed that, and that really helped. It kind of makes existing in those spaces easier. Yeah.
That's awesome. You're an audio learner.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So I went back into your Lore Olympus updates from ages ago where you had, don't be nervous. But you had a Q&A that you posted, the first Q&A you ever posted back at issue 17 or something like that. And you talked about your process, your storytelling process, and I wanted to read it back to you to see what's changed 250 episodes later. So
Oh no.
But I'm just paraphrasing. Step one, you write a script.
Okay.
And you said your script was originally like 400 words or so. Step two, you would sketch out the comic, you would color the frames, add the word balloons as you go. And then you also said that you like to make sure the composition is dramatic, which I thought was really cool. And then you would start to focus on the finer details like anatomy. So you'd think big picture first, then kind of narrow it down to the finer details. How has your process changed in like 5 years?
So I'm really into the fact that you don't have to stick to one way of doing something.
Yeah.
So if you have like writer's block or anything and it's just like not working for you, it's okay to change it. So I have like several different systems now, especially so some of the episodes are more action based and they're kind of hard to write for, so it's actually better to just like thumbnail it out really quick so you know how many panels you need to have someone zoom around and do something because it's kind of hard to know until you draw it. But in terms of like the writing, I think what I'll do now, because I used to be like, it has to be exactly this, and now I'm like, just type for the wind, don't think about the limits, and then go back and edit it. I do think now in later seasons, the dialogue is a lot more, there's more of it because it's just later in the series and they have to talk about more. And earlier on, it's more like, hi, hello, how are you? Yeah, so I think you have to, it's a lot more like there's a lot more exposition and feelings and things. But yeah, I think like it sometimes can go to like 800 words or something like that. Like I know sometimes it goes to 1,000 and I'm like, oh, I gotta cut the fat. Yeah.
So yeah, your process is adapted some
Yeah.
for where the story is naturally. So also in that same Q&A, you mentioned that you struggle to draw men's butts. Is that still a struggle for you, or have you mastered the butt?
I feel like I'm good. Yeah, I got there.
You got that down. And then once you've talked to me about crowd scenes kind of being something, how is that? How do you manage a crowd scene?
It's still hard. I think like you can, like it's hard in the sense that like you can use resources and assets to, beef it out a little bit, but unfortunately like Lore Olympus characters have a very distinct look. So there are options, like I'll use a lot of like stamp brushes and then kind of go in and edit them, but like ultimately like some crowd scenes just require like more detail, and this is like obviously I'm very lucky to be able to have the funds to be able to have assistants to help me with that sort of thing. So they are easier, but not on my own. Yeah, there we go.
You need
like
the
I'm
support.
like I need a help. Yeah.
So you also mentioned that one of your favorite things is drawing kisses.
Oh yes.
Can we talk about the kisses in Lore Olympus? There's so many good ones.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite? I mean, one of my favorites is Hades and Persephone's first kiss. They've had some really good ones.
Yeah, I think the first kiss is pretty good. I think there's like one where she kisses him on the cheek, which I think is very sweet. It's like a sweet little thing. And the one where they reunite after like a really long time.
Yeah.
I liked that one. Yes.
Yeah, those are awesome.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
Yes.
And it's funny because I was looking back, there's a lot of different kisses throughout the series too, like a lot of different characters. You're like, oh, did not remember seeing Zeus kiss Thetis there. But it's good to see them. Like I remember Psyche and Eros very early on kissing. So beautiful with all the color. Awesome. So with kissing, we got to a place where Hades and Persephone had their first night together after they were married. What kind of thoughts went in, like getting to these really big moments, because that's something we've all been waiting for. What was the process of starting to write and draw that?
I think so within the guidelines of the Apple and Google store, I am very limited on what I can show. So I have to be very creative about how I show them. So it does require some thinking. I think I try to aim to make it like quite subtle, and it has to be like, I would say very holistic almost, like, and very caring. Like I try to make it as like caring and as just like you look at it and you're like, these characters like really long for each other, and they just really, it's really fantastic that they finally just get to enjoy each other on a physical level. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that comes through in the comic for sure. So I have a question about your episodes. You've had so many of them. How do you title them? Because I find it really interesting. Sometimes the title will be like something that's said in the episode. Like my favorite title is Once I Was a Goddess. I talk about it all the time. I love Hera's backstory, and it's just a beautiful title. So how do you title your episodes?
There's lots of different ways I go about it. It can be a pun. Love a good pun.
Yeah.
Stag Urate is still my favorite one. I think, sometimes I just look at like the overall theme and it's that, but if I can find a joke, that's also very good. And otherwise it's just something that's said in the episode.
Yeah. Like The Rub. When her
The
is
Rub.
like, here's the rub.
That was a good one too.
Those are great titles. So one thing I really appreciate, if we could talk about your characters in Lore Olympus for a little bit, is how distinct their voices are. So Persephone doesn't sound like Hera, because Hera sounds like Hera. They all have their own voices. I would say Hermes sounds very different from Hades. How do you keep their voices so unique so that they don't all sound the same?
That's a good question. I think I try to work really hard on that, because sometimes I'm like concerned about, if you took all the drawings away, would it sound like, would you be able to tell? But I think like the characters like Hades, he has a very like, he's always like very embarrassed all the time about being in the predicament that he's in, and that's very hard for him. And Hera's, at a point in her life where she's not really worried about hurting people's feelings anymore, so that's fun. And Hermes is like very jovial, but also like he can be very snippy, for lack of a better description. I think just as like it kind of goes back to like the story Bible, where you have like notes on like how they should be, and it kind of like sometimes you'll write an outline for a character and then you get to that point in the story and then you realize there's no way that character would do that thing. I'm like, that character wouldn't leave that character alone with this, or they wouldn't separate now, or they just wouldn't do this. Is unrealistic for them, and it's hard to know until you get there.
Well, how would you classify like Demeter's voice?
Demeter is like, when I think about her being like, she knows all the rules and she knows how they're supposed to be, and she kind of has hurt feelings that no one else wants to follow the rules, and she's the most responsible one, but no one asked her to be the most responsible one, so it's a little bit of, that as well.
Wow, that's so insightful. It's like Demeter's like, I'm following the rules. Why is no one else doing this?
Yes.
That's her perspective.
Yes.
So what made you want to like focus in on the mother-daughter relationship? Because we've got some really great episodes with this mother-daughter relationship between Demeter and Persephone.
So I think there's so much to be said about like the mother-daughter relationship, and I actually went on a big research thing to, find out why that is, because you'll find it's quite common. People will be like, oh, the mother-daughter relationship is the most complicated in the whole world. And spoiler, it's a patriarchy. That's what it is. And it's basically because, I have to credit this woman. She's actually a New Zealander as well. She's a psychologist, and she wrote a book about it. But she basically said that, so your mother has been, had all these expectations laid out on her. And she's like, okay, this is how I woman, this is how I do it. And then you're there, and she's like, please do the things that I did. I don't understand why you don't want to do them. And that's where a lot of the conflict comes from. And it's very much like a generational pressure. And it's super interesting. I'm not doing it justice the way I'm speaking it right now, but yeah, it's
I feel like you are. There's so much,
you.
yeah, there's so much generational stuff going on in Lore Olympus. Yeah, that really hits home. So I've seen in the comments section that people were like, Lore Olympus takes me to therapy. Like, I literally feel like in a great way. Like, it takes me to therapy. When I'm with the therapy scenes, I feel like I'm learning something. How do you write those? They're so great.
So basically, I will just do as much research as humanly possible on those subjects. Like, I'm not going to go to school to do it because there's a bit of work, but I'm like, I do want it to be as authentic as possible. I know, obviously, everyone has the same therapist in Lore Olympus. That's not good. Don't do that in real life. Have different therapists. But I'm like, oh, we've only got time for one, and she's pretty good. It's fine. But yeah, I just do a lot of, I just look at the topic and I'll just go and do like a bit of reading and like go through some support websites and try and work out like the most supportive language to use. And I also will get like a couple of sensitivity readers to read over it and, you know, say if it fits for them or not. Like sometimes like, I would say it's not 100%, like, I feel like probably like too much is suggested in the sessions, which isn't realistic to therapy. Like there's a lot of like leading, but I'm like, oh well, this is a story. So it's okay. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, move this along. Yeah, but like you know, I do the best I can. Yeah,
It's great. Yeah,
Thank you.
I feel like it's a highlight. And so, with those scenes, we've seen Demeter and Persephone in therapy. We've seen Persephone in therapy by herself. Do you feel like we'll see more therapy in the story as it continues?
I'm not going to say no, but I feel like we've had enough therapy. But there may be opportunity for more therapy. It just depends, because sometimes, you know, something might seem like a good idea, but then you realize it's kind of like, you know, moving the food around the plate, and I'm like, it's still potatoes on the other side of the plate. Yeah. Yeah.
And one last question about the characters. I want to talk about how they each have like such a deep backstory that goes like back into war, the scars that they carry. How did you decide which characters would like hold on to what wounds? Like, how did you write all of that backstory?
I did it really early on, where I was like, they need to have some sort of like this particular. So I mean, obviously, I've kind of revised it a little bit because the original like mythology, like lots of people were in those, like lots of characters were in those wars. But I was like, for this specific instance, it you know it makes sense to shrink the cohort. So there's this kind of like, I guess, threatening guilt about it. And I also really like that Zeus is not damaged at all. And he's like, yeah, like, I'm cool too, guys. And it's, I don't know, I think it like makes his character interesting doing that. But I think for everyone else, I think like the positions aren't necessarily important. It's mainly that like Hera and Hades are like the worst. Yeah, like
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I get it. So the characters are also very funny. You inject a lot of humor. She's naturally funny, like she, and you inject a lot of humor. How do you do that in your comic?
I think it's because it's a lot of the story is very sad, and naturally, like comedy to me is born from sorrow and tragedy. Like it just they go hand in hand, because if you can't laugh in the face of evil, what are you gonna do? Like how do we go on? And it just makes it better to laugh at it. And I do think adding comedy to a drama like really adds levity to it. It just I don't know, you can't have a feast without salty and sweet. You know what I mean?
It's true. Yeah. And Aries, I just have to say, cracks me up. He's so funny. So let's talk about Lore Olympus being in print. You can get physical copies. How has that process been for you?
It's been really cool. I'm super lucky because I don't. So before I made comics, I was actually a graphic designer, and I knew that transitioning the books from the webtoon into like a book would take a lot of work. So I'm very lucky that I did not have to lay those out. I was like, yes, I'm not gonna do it. But like the whole process, like I still make the art for the covers, and we still go through everything together. And it's just really beautiful to see the final book. And one of the things about having a tangible book is being able to see the amount of work that's there. Because I think one of the drawbacks, I mean, not a drawback, but it's just different when you're looking at it on a phone. You know, like each chapter is 60 to 80 panels, which is a lot, but it feels like not a lot on a phone. But if you look at it printed, you're like, wow, that's a lot. And so each book, I think, equates to over half a year's worth of work.
Wow.
So it's nice to see those big chunky bugs. It's very good.
Right, you hold it in your hand.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, I did this.
You've walked into like a Barnes & Noble and seen your displays before, I assume?
Yes.
How does that feel?
It's so good. It's so nice.
It's amazing, yeah. I went and I was like, this whole section is just Lore Olympus. How incredible. So, also speaking about adaptations, Lore Olympus is in development for TV with Wattpad, Webtoon Studios, and the Jim Henson Company. What can you tell us? What are you allowed to say about how that process has been?
It's been really interesting. It's been an education for me. So what has been done so far is beautiful. Like, if I could share it, I would, but I can't because that's very naughty. But it would be very bad. But from what I've seen, I'm like, fans of Lore Olympus would love it. Like, you know, I have like complete confidence in it. Like, you know how sometimes you're like, I don't know how people are gonna like this, but I'm like, I know it won't be a mixed bag. Like, I know people will be like, wow, 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 and everyone will be really happy. Yes.
Oh my gosh, we're excited, anticipating that. So speaking of fans of Lore Olympus, have you had any really fun fan interactions, any memorable ones that you want to share with us?
I've got a couple.
Yeah, I'd love to hear them.
So there is a woman called Hikate Sketches, and she does a cook-along where if there's food in Lore Olympus, she will make that food, even if it's like Persephone's like big gulp drink. And I posted the recipe, and I think I said it was like a Mountain Dew mixed with like a Red Bull and like 3 liters of sugar. I can't remember. It was like, it was not a healthy drink to make. And I was like, nobody make this drink. You'll be very ill. Don't do it. But she was like, I'm going to make it. And she did. She did make it. And I hope she didn't drink it. And I hope that she's okay. So that's wonderful. I think one year for my birthday, people got me like a card. Like, it was like a digital card, but it was really cool because it was like, I've never received such a card for my birthday before, and it was just, I think it was like 2020, and it was so wonderful. It was just like pages and pages and pages of like beautiful messages for my birthday, and I'm like quite a loner in real life, so, you know, to have such a huge card with all of these nice things written, it was very special. Sorry, I'm tearing up, because I'm like, oh, my card. What else? I think when the kiss scene happened, there was somebody on Twitter who made like a drag race video about it, and it was so good, and it was like from like All Stars, and it was Aja doing her dance or something, and they put in all the names of everyone being really impressed, and that was really cool. I like that.
Love that. Yeah, and I also saw Hecate Sketches on Instagram, if you guys want to follow. It's so great to see the food from Lore Olympus just come to life. It's incredible. And so there's also cosplayers of Lore Olympus. I see some here.
Yes.
How's it been to see people cosplay your characters?
Oh, it's really cool. You guys look great. You look amazing. And it's such a commitment to paint your body or like
Full-time commitment.
I appreciate you. And I don't know, as a creator, it's so touching to see people who care about your characters so much that they want to dress up as them, and it's very special.
Yeah, I once did a Psyche cosplay, and I was like,
I remember. It's good.
Woo! So would you ever cosplay one of your characters, you think?
I don't know.
If you were, who would you choose?
I think I would dress up as one of those characters that works at the bank. That feels right.
I love that.
Like, there's one episode where they're at the bank and one of the clerks is like, and I'm like, that's kind of my energy, and I worked at a bank once, so I'm like, yeah.
And so, what is your advice for other creators who want to get started? You've shared some advice throughout this panel already, but
I think if you were looking to get started, it could be really daunting. And I think what is really important is to just get started and make a lot of mistakes and really reprogram how you feel about the word mistake and make it like a learning tool rather than a bad thing. Because I'm like, you need to do mistakes in order to learn. And I think it's good to work on your do like small ones and get them finished if you can. If obviously if they're making you miserable, don't do them. But if you can finish it, finish it. Body's perfect, so you know, better finished than perfect. Get it done, and learn as much as you can, because often you'll look at the creators that you love, like their best-selling books or like their movies, their acting skills or whatever, and you're in awe at how good they are. But you know, there's a whole iceberg, and it took them ages to like hone their craft. And so everyone starts somewhere, and you just kind of have to keep at it, and you'll get there. And just make the process enjoyable for yourself. Like, don't commit to things that really irritate you. Like when I first started doing Lore Olympus, I was like, oh, I'm gonna make the characters really colorful because that's fun for me, and like I like working. I just really like pink, to be honest. And one of my assistants, Lizette Carrera, she told me that the pink hurts her eyes when she's working on it, and she has to use like a green filter, so she doesn't see like pink blots afterwards. And I was like, that's like, I don't know how healthy that is, but like it's also hilarious. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But I don't have that problem, and I'm like, maybe my eyes do hurt and I haven't noticed yet, and it will all come together in one evening, and I'll be like,
hopefully
I don't
not.
know.
When you first started, did you have a goal in mind, or was it just to put it out there and see what happens? Like, was your goal to be like, yeah, did you have any goals in your head, like a specific thing, or were you just like, I'm going to start something and I'm going to finish it?
I definitely wanted to do something from start to finish. I think the original outline was for 40 episodes, because to me at the time that seemed like a lot. And I think I didn't have a concept of, okay, I'm gonna take a turn. So you know when you go to the fair and there's a giant jar and it's filled with jelly beans, and they're like, guess the jelly beans, and I'm like, okay, and I say 1 billion, and they're like, that's wrong, and I don't have a good concept of like time and space, and so to me it seems like it's only going to take like a chapter to do, and I'm like, no, it's going to take like 5 chapters to do. So yeah, bigger. I don't even know where I was going with that. I'm just thinking about the jelly beans now.
Well, you said your goal was to start and finish
Yeah,
the comic.
so it just spread out. I'm just like a bad spreading out person.
But no, that's good. You gave us more content to enjoy, right?
Yeah.
So you said that you were a bank teller. Are there other things that like are from your life that are sprinkled throughout Lore Olympus?
There's a lot of customer service roles in it because I've worked in customer service a lot. I've worked as a tailor consultant, selling pants, and like that sort of thing. I've sold furniture. I used to work at an internet and gaming cafe, which is all sorts of interesting. They don't have them. Do they have them anymore?
Internet gaming cafes?
I think people just game at home now. But yeah, it was like a 24-hour one, and it's everything you imagine.
That's so funny.
So yeah, you just meet all sorts, and you're like, But yes, I think the best stories kind of come from like little things from life.
Yeah, sprinkle them in.
Yeah.
So if people have questions, I see a microphone in the center. They can start lining up while I ask Rachel my last question. which is like more about what's next in the future. Do you have other stories in mind? Do you sometimes like think and daydream about other stories? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I definitely, I think like most writers and creators come up with stories on the side while they're working on a project because like you just can't help it. I think I had avoided it for a little while because I feel like I'm cheating on my story when I think of something else and I'm like, no, I have to think all on this one story all the time. But I have like started to draft out some new ideas, mainly as like a palette cleanser, just so I can like take a mental break from Lore Olympus so I can come back to it and feel fresh.
I feel like it's the best way for your brain to like
Yeah.
let it go for a second and then come back to it.
Yeah. Like, you know how you kind of put out like the seed for the idea and you leave it and you come back and you can kind of know whether you can follow through with it or not? Yeah.
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 All right, it looks like we have a question. Go ahead.
Hi. I just wanted to first acknowledge all of your work. I've been looking at Lore Olympus since the very start, and I just love it. The design that you do in each of the chapters and even each box is amazing. So I know it's a very hard work to do the timeline with, I think, 3-4 years on the story. So my question is, how have you been balancing your life and work to stay your mental health and your physical health? Because I know it is very hard for any artist to keep up with that type of hard work.
I'm going to be really honest and tell you that I actually work pretty much every day. Like sometimes it's not all day. So like I'll have like a light working day where sometimes I'll do like a half day. But like if you run your own business, it is kind of like the nature of the beast. But I am having time off right now, and it is great. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much as well.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ann, and I wanted to really thank you because you brought my daughter and her brother really close together because he's 22 and she's 15, and so it's like they're all excited every Saturday when you're about to the release like of your next episode and stuff, and they keep me up to date on stuff, and it's like 99 days, okay, we can do this. So I was wondering, how did you come up with the colors? Because I always loved looking at the different colors of the different characters. I know you brought up your one person that works for you can't do the pink, but other than that, how did you come up with the different colors for your characters? I know the Hades from Disney was blue. Was that your influence, or?
So Hades, I don't want to know. This might be a spoiler. Has everyone like read all of what's online right now? Yeah. No. You good? Okay.
There's some no's in there.
Oh, there's some no's.
There's a few people who are behind.
I think it's not like massive. It's just like a little fact nugget. But he's blue like the sky, and it's kind of odd in the sense that he is technically like the firstborn son, and like quite often in mythology, and particularly Greek mythology, the most powerful gods are like sky gods, and they control the weather. And I kind of like the idea of him being this downgraded sky god, and that he has to go do something else. And he actually looks like Oranos, and it's like really obvious, but it's been kind of hidden the whole time. And you're like, oh, yeah, they do look the same. But and for the colors, I kind of just pick what I think is fun to look at. Like naturally, I'm like, this feels good. The main characters like Hades and Persephone, it's very environmental in the sense that when Persephone goes into the underworld, she pops out a lot. She's like this little pink dot in a blue sea, and it just, yeah, I don't know, I think it looks good. I was like, this is nice. Yeah, thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
I really enjoy your work. I study Greek tragedy, and your work is part of this very fascinating cultural moment that I'm noticing where the Hades and Persephone story is popping up in a bunch of different genres. I'm sure everyone here has played Hades, and I'm sure everyone here has listened to Hades Town. And so I'm wondering, these stories, which are, in fact, also your story, how do you feel about these other iterations in this cultural moment?
More Hades and Persephone in the world is fine with me. I'm like, bring it on.
Hello,
Hello.
So two things. Number one, thank you for existing. I think all of us can agree that we're just so grateful that you exist at the same time we do. I know that a lot of my friendships are just so great. But number two is that we're sleeping on the fact of how beautiful of animation of fashion you have. So my question is, do you have a mood board? Do you have a Pinterest board? Do you watch shows? Like, how do you have categories for each character, and how do you get such inspiration to get them so perfectly in line with their personalities?
So I've always liked designing clothes and things. I really early on in life I was a figure skater, and my mother sews, and she used to sew like all my leotards for me. And so if you have a skating routine, generally you have music, and the music normally comes from a movie, and so you watch the movie and like study the clothes in the movie, and then you try and make your leotard look like clothes from the movie. So there's a lot of stuff like that. But I love window shopping for clothes online, so I'll just like constantly look at dresses, and I do have a Pinterest, and I'll spend a lot of time there. I really like to focus on clothes that are historical but also like timeless, because I am aware that like some elements of the comic will age over time. Like it already has some of it, so it's better to kind of put them in clothes that, you know, would look good in any era, and it future-proofs it. Yeah.
So first of all, I just got to say it's actually incredibly great to hear that you got into Greek mythology because of Hercules. I did too, and I've been studying Greek mythology ever since in my downtime, and I know pretty much everyone in this room that's read Lore Olympus hates Apollo. But knowing how many other Greek gods and goddesses are out there that have kind of the same issues as Zeus, what was your inspiration for making Apollo the bad guy when it came to attacking Persephone?
So I think what it comes down to is looking at Greek mythology as a whole, and he is sort of the most, he is one of the most important and crucial deities in the pantheon. He is in charge of so many things, and I think it really subverts that expectation that you have, where you think that he's going to be very, very good. And I think in society, we often hold up men who we perceive to be as very, very good. And it makes sense for the story to flip it a little bit, because Hades is kind of always the bad guy. So I'm like, Hades could have a turn at being good. And like the same for Hera as well, because Hera often gets like the villain edit. And I love Hera, and I'm like, I'm just gonna give her the best story ever. I love her so much. I mean, she's still like deeply problematic in the mythology, obviously, but it's just everyone gets a turn at being good sometimes. Yeah.
Hi, and thank you in advance. I wanted to ask you, when you were adapting the Greek myth to the modern world, what were the biggest challenges that you faced, and how did you try to troubleshoot through them?
That's a good question. I think probably one of the hardest things is just kind of streamlining it in a way that is believable, and like it's probably corny, but I try to make it like not corny, so you're like, yeah, I could go with this. I think probably one of the hardest things about modern story writing is cell phones. Because they just ruin everything, because so many problems are solved with a simple text message, and you're just done. And like every time you want to block people off, you have to do like, oh, I've got no bars or something, and it's just like, oh, really? Yeah.
Hi, it's great to meet you. I had a question about the character colors. So in particular, sometimes you subvert our expectations. So like, for example, Ares is yellow, which we think of as joyful, but then he's this angry war god. Was there any inspiration behind that and kind of changing our perception of colors?
So, my friend had a baby a little while ago, and the baby was a redhead, and she had like no eyebrows, but prior to crying, so before she would cry, they would like start turning red and you know she was gonna cry. And so that's why he looks like that, and that's why he gets like more red, is because of that baby.